This is going to be part of a frequent series I'm going to do called CYA, Cover Your Assets. And first of all, why are we talking about covering your assets? We here at Everyday Money Heroes believe that we should be intentional with our spending. We believe in delayed gratification. We believe in living below our means. And when we're doing all those things, we have to protect the bag. And there's going to be certain things that's going to happen in life where individuals will try to get what you've worked very hard for.
Everyday people working 9 to 5, saving up that money, trying to survive, investing in the future, trying to be wise. We're gonna be money heroes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nick Johnson, host of Everyday Money Heroes, and I've reached early retirement. I'm here to provide information on how to obtain financial independence and inspire you through sharing stories of everyday people who are turning knowledge into freedom.
That hustle, always reaching for the sky. We're gonna be money heroes, never gonna shy.
Hello and welcome to Everyday Money Heroes. We provide information and inspiration to people of all ages to take control of their financial journey. I'm your host, Nick Johnson, and today we are going to discuss rental car insurance. Why am I talking about rental car insurance? Well, this is going to be part of a frequent series I'm going to do called CYA, Cover Your Assets. And first of all, why are we talking about covering your assets? We here at Everyday Money Heroes believe that we should be intentional with our spending. We believe in delayed gratification. We believe in living below our means. And when we're doing all those things, we have to protect the bag. And there's going to be certain things that's going to happen in life where individuals will try to get what you've worked very hard for. And so I had a recent situation that happened with a rental car company. And there were a few things that I did that allowed me to be able to dispute some charges that they were trying to give me. So I felt as though this was extremely useful information that I could share to those of you out there in the audience. And before we get started, I would just like to ask you, if you have not, that you would subscribe to Everyday Money Heroes. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're listening to us on your podcast player of choice, that you would follow us there and that you would also just share us with a friend here. And we have the season coming up now where, spring break is coming and folks are going to be taking trips. I typically prefer to drive for several reasons. First of all, we're now traveling as a family of four. And so whenever we can drive somewhere, it's just more cost efficient. Most of the time when we go somewhere, we would need to get a rental car anyway. And so if I can usually get there in a day, I'll just drive there with the family. And also, if I prefer not to put the additional wear and tear on our primary vehicles. If you think about it, at least for us, a typical trip for us can easily be 25, 3,000 miles. So if you look at it that way, that's probably typically for us about 2 months worth of just traditional driving in the city. So that's additional wear and tear on the vehicle. That's almost like, in my mind's eye, the way I think about it, I'm taking 2 months off of the life of our vehicle. So by just getting that rental, I am giving us 2 additional months of use out of our vehicle. And so I'm going to do a couple things here. First of all, I'm going to talk about typically rental car insurance, right? So that's what you can do to protect yourself if something happens to your rental car. And so what happens is that the rental company's primary responsibility and concern is the rental vehicle, getting that vehicle back in the same condition in which it was given to you. And so typically what you'll notice is that the concern is that those insurances that they provide are primarily just for the rental car to make it whole. So if something happens to it, they're going to ask you to make sure that that happens. So I'm going to first of all talk about how that rental vehicle can be covered. I'm going to discuss the options that they give you as far as if you purchase it from them, and then just some other things that you can do to protect yourself when someone is trying to get you to part with that hard-earned money that you've made. So first of all, what I suggest and what I do personally myself is that I look at my personal auto insurance. That's just it. So oftentimes your personal car insurance will cover and extend to a rental car that you're in. Okay, so that's the first thing that I suggest doing and what I've done. So look at your coverages. If you can't understand what your coverage is, reach out to your insurance agent to just make sure that the rental car will be covered up under your own personal policy. So if you don't have any insurance at all, there's many people right now who just don't have personal vehicles. They might live in a walkable community where they don't have one, or they might just take public transportation, things like that. So they just might not have a personal auto insurance policy of their own. So that's not an option. If you only have minimum state requirement, like here in the state of Florida, you're only really required to have PIP and liability. So that wouldn't cover a rental car. So you would be in a situation there where it wouldn't be covered. But when you get to the point where you start to have full coverage and comprehensive stuff like that, there's a good chance that your personal auto insurance policy will extend to it. So look into that. So that's one option for you. The second option that I would recommend is your credit card. So there are some credit cards actually, especially some of the travel credit cards, they'll extend, they'll cover a rental for you. And so, for instance, I know that Capital One and Chase are very good options for having a credit card that will cover the rental. All right. But just keeping in mind that there are two different types of coverages when it comes to credit cards. Some is primary and some is secondary. So when it comes to primary coverage, the credit card just pays first. So it doesn't get your personal auto insurance involved in anything. All right. Secondary is that they'll go through your personal insurance first, and then they'll try to once that kind of works its way through, then they'll go and they'll try to see what they can do after your personal insurance has done that. And so what you want to do is look into your credit card and see if that happens. Capital One and Chase, if memory serves me correctly, are actually primary coverage first credit cards. I think the Venture X, and then there's one of the brands in Chase. I think I think the preferred and the reserve both are considered to be primary coverage first credit cards. Things change all the time, so please verify that before you go and do it. But this is one thing you want to make sure: you must pay for the entire rental on that card. You can't do part of it. Like for instance, say you might say that you want to use your Capital One card, and you might go to the Capital One portal, and you might have some points, and you'll see that you have no points to maybe cover half of it, and then you might put the rest of it on your Capital One card. That's a little gray area. And so since you're not paying for the entire rental using the actual card, it might say you didn't pay for the entire thing. So just make sure that you're paying for the entire rental on that credit card, whether it is primary or secondary. So just make sure that you have covered the entire balance of that rental on your card. Okay. Sometimes there are also options where your other insurances might cover things like, for instance, your health insurance and your homeowner's insurance. Like, say, for instance, if there is an accident or whatever, you get, some coverage there. But remember, the primary objective here is just to make sure that we are covering the rental car. And so that's why you want to look at credit cards and your personal auto insurance. There are some things, if none of those things work out for you and you have to go through the rental car company, there's a couple things that you'll hear about. You might hear about collision, loss damages, that type of insurance. So you want to make sure you do those. And then there's also personal accident insurance that covers medical bills. And then also it's things like personal effects coverage. And those are things you can buy from them. Personal effects just covers your personal belongings if they're stolen, things like that. Personal accident insurance is covering medical bills and things of that nature. So those are all things that you can get from the actual rental car vendor. Those things are, just to be completely honest, they're typically really expensive. But the thing is that if you don't have personal insurance already, like auto insurance, and you can't get coverage through your credit cards, that's something that you may need to do just to mitigate risk. God forbid something does happen there. So you just want to keep that in mind. I do know from hearing individuals who use Toro, it appears that I'm a little skeptical from some of the things I've heard and some of the experiences that individuals have had when it comes to Toro. That I've heard some people who are putting their vehicles out on Toro that says that there's always something wrong with it when it comes back. And so it almost may seem like no matter what you did with it, that they were going to try to put some type of additional fees on there. So if you decide to go like through maybe like something like a Toro, I would just suggest you might want to maybe use whatever additional coverages that they give you there because you might be fighting with a challenge. Some things to think about as far as when it makes sense to get extra coverage. First of all, if you want to try to avoid any claims on your personal insurance. Also, if you're renting abroad, so if you're out driving in another country, there's a good chance that your rental policy, as far as your U.S. based personal auto insurance, won't do anything over there. If you don't have comprehensive collision, you might want to look at getting a rental car there. If you have an extremely high deductible, you might want to think about using the rental coverage through the rental vendor. And there's also this other thing called loss of use. So even if you do have insurance through other means, whether it's the credit card or your personal insurance, there's still a possibility that the vendor might say, okay, you are fixing the vehicle, but we're still losing revenue because that vehicle is not in our fleet and we can't rent it out. So there's still options there as well. Haven't heard of that being pinned pinned on a lot of folks, but that's still an option as well. They may do that. I do remember as a young person that there was a situation where actually I had to rent a car and something happened. Didn't get insurance, so I ended up having to pay out of pocket for that. But those things do happen. So back then, I wish I would have known what I know now, as far as like things like credit cards and being able to use your own personal insurance. Back then, I had PIP and liability, so I didn't have that option. So I ended up paying out of pocket at that particular time. So those are some of the things you want to keep in mind when it comes to rental car coverage. Why am I sharing this? Because it's that time of year. But also there are some other things that you can do. We've talked about insurance, but also there's other fees that individuals may try to charge you for, and they may not be warranted. So I'm going to tell you why I decided to record this episode. Recently, I rented a car, and I wasn't going to say the name of the company, but I'm going to say it because it seems like after I had the experience with them, I started looking around. It seemed like there were a few stories out there where other people had some challenges with them, and I don't even know if I'm going to pronounce it right. It's Sixt, Sixt. And what happened is that for the most part, the experience was good. I got a good rate on the vehicle. I didn't have any issues. I think it was only like maybe 1,000 miles on the vehicle when I got it. So it was a brand new vehicle. I had it for 3 days and I returned it to the airport. And the return is when things went a little sideways. And so what happened is that I got there and there was no one there. And so there's a sign. The sign said to deposit your keys, have a great day. So I actually hung around for a little bit. My rental was due back at 11 p.m. March 1st. It was 11 p.m. And so I hung around for a little bit and nobody ever came back. There was no attendant. I understand it was a Sunday night, so and it was late, so nobody was there. So I dropped the keys off. But what I did do when it comes down to the CYA aspect of it, and like I said, CYA is covering your assets. I decided to do a walk around. And so I'm going to share here a video of a couple of things that I did. First of all, the video here is just me walking around the rental car. You see, it's nothing really major. It's just me just doing a quick walk around, just showing that there is no major damage to the vehicle and that everything is fine. Actually, I suggest doing this When you first pick up the vehicle, as far as just doing a quick walk around, just ensuring that there's no issues with it. If it is, please bring it to the attendants or the rental agency's attention. Then also do it at the end. And so that's what I'm doing. And also, since there was no one here, I decided to take a picture, and I'm going to slice in the picture here. It was getting late. I was tired. I had driven from literally from Alabama to Atlanta, Georgia, down to Jacksonville, Florida. I was tired. And so I typically don't have like a timestamp on my camera on my phone. So what I did is that I held up my watch that had the date and the time on it. And literally you could see the drop box for the keys and you can see the vehicle all in the same picture. So I took it and it showed that I was actually early on return the vehicle. And this was just a form of CYA, which was, like I said, cover my assets. And so didn't really think anything else about it until maybe 2 days later. No, the next day. The next day, um, I got the invoice by way of email, and it showed that they had, I guess the attendant finally showed up at 12:07 Monday. Okay, 12:07 a.m. So I turned it in around 10:55 on Sunday night. The attendant finally checked it in at 12:07 the next day in the morning, which is technically only an hour, like a little over an hour, but that's when it happened. And so I looked down at the bottom of the final bill and I noticed I got charged with another day. I was like, well, I was like, I brought this back on time. And so what happened is that I reached out. They sent a survey and they were like, hey, how did things go? So in the survey, literally, I went through and I said, I was charged an additional day for this because there was no attendant there. I followed your process and still I was charged extra days. So what I was able to do is actually go upload the pictures I had taken showing the key drop box and the vehicle and my watch in that image. And I uploaded it saying, I need you all to refund me this additional day of renting this vehicle because I brought it back on time. And lo and behold, I got an email maybe another day saying, hey, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Thank you for providing the information because I had actually called before I got the survey and they told me that they would have to go and pull the video to see when I brought it in. And I didn't really get the warm and fuzzies about that because I really didn't think that they were going to do that. And I would like to think that since there was not an attendant there before they charged me that one day, they would have verified when I actually brought the vehicle back, but they didn't do that. So I went ahead and I submitted the proof of when I returned it within the survey, and someone did get back to me, and they did resolve the issue. And so I was able to dispute it just by taking out maybe an extra minute, 2 minutes at tops of just going through video taping the actual condition of the vehicle and also just taking a couple pictures of the car, my watch, and things like that. So that is just a way that I covered my assets, and you can cover your assets as well. I have done this every time I return a rental vehicle. I have never needed to use it until just recently. So you never know when that's going to happen. Usually I'll take the videos and I will take the pictures if needed. Most of the time it's an attendant there. It just was no attendant this time. And I'll take the videos. I'll take, and I'll take pictures also sometimes of the odometer, but usually it's unlimited miles. It doesn't matter. The biggest issue is the just for them to say that I returned it on full because I don't want to say I did return on full. So I'll take whatever pictures I feel like I need to take, and then once everything's resolved and I get like my final bill, I'll just delete that stuff. But this just so happened that was the time I needed it. So hopefully you found this of value. Just understanding the different types of protections that you can have when it comes to a rental car, because I know that summer is around the corner and spring is here and that people be taking different types of trips. And also the importance of just covering your assets. And we need to do that, because there are a lot of people out here who are trying to separate us from our hard-earned money. And so we need to oftentimes be on the offensive when it comes to protecting what we have. So that's what I have. Once again, if you have not, please take a moment to subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you are listening to us on your podcast platform of choice that you will follow us there. Also, drop comments down in the section of this episode. Have you ever had a situation where you had to dispute some charges from a rental car company or anything of that nature? So, that being said, I'm your host, Nick Johnson, and I'm going to remind you to trust the process. Have a great day.